Climate change and international relations, impacts, challenges, and the future of global cooperation. Imagine a world where coastlines redraw international borders, where once stable nations face food shortages, and where climate-induced migration shapes global politics more than any conflict of the past century. This isn't science fiction, it's the quiet transformation already underway. Each year brings new extremes. Heatwaves breaking historical records, floods submerging cities, and droughts destabilizing regions. But beneath these dramatic events lies a deeper story, one of global power shifts, resource competition, and diplomatic challenges that no single nation can navigate alone. Climate change has become one of the most consequential forces shaping the international system, altering not only ecosystems, but the very foundation of global stability. So as you watch this lecture, consider this question. What happens when the greatest threat to national security isn't another country, but the planet's own rising temperature? For international relations students, the climate crisis is not merely a scientific issue. It is a geopolitical game changer. Understanding its impacts is essential for understanding tomorrow's world. Today, we'll break down how climate science intersects with diplomacy, economics, security, and global cooperation. Because climate change doesn't respect borders, treaties, or political ideologies, and the decisions nations make now will determine the balance of power for generations. Introduction. Before diving into impacts and solutions, we must understand what climate change truly represents. At its core, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperature, precipitation patterns, and atmospheric conditions driven largely by human activities. Unlike weather, which changes day to day, climate shapes the stability of societies over decades and centuries. For international relations students, this distinction matters because global politics depends on predictability, predictable food production, predictable seasons, predictable access to water and resources. Climate change disrupts this predictability, introducing uncertainty into every aspect of governance, development, and diplomacy. We're living in a time when environmental change is directly influencing foreign policy debates. Nations are negotiating emissions targets the same way they negotiate trade deals or security alliances. Humanitarian agencies are preparing for displacement driven not by conflict, but by sea level rise and drought. Military strategists are assessing climate vulnerabilities as seriously as they assess rival nations' capabilities. In other words, the climate crisis has embedded itself into the heart of global governance. In this lecture, we'll explore the scientific foundations of climate change, but our analysis will always connect back to global politics. Our goal is to understand not just what is happening to the planet, but what it means for the future of the international system. Science of climate change. To understand climate change's geopolitical consequences, we must first grasp the science behind it. The Earth's climate is regulated by the greenhouse effect, a natural process where gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor trap heat in the atmosphere. Without this effect, the planet would be too cold for human life. The crisis emerges when human activities intensify this effect by pumping excessive greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, burning fossil fuels, clearing forests, industrial agriculture, and large-scale manufacturing. All contribute to this imbalance. Over the past century, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have increased dramatically compared to pre-industrial times. Scientists track this through ice cores, satellite data, and global temperature measurements, and the evidence is overwhelming. The planet is warming faster than at any point in recorded human history. This warming disrupts long-term climate patterns, affecting rainfall, storm intensity, ocean temperatures, and seasonal cycles. For international relations, this scientific reality sets the stage for political consequences. A warmer planet alters economic productivity, shifts geopolitical priorities, and forces nations to reconsider energy strategies. Understanding the science isn't just about knowing the numbers, it's about recognizing the environmental forces reshaping diplomacy, development, and international cooperation. Climate science is no longer separate from global politics. It informs the Italiano environmental impacts. The environmental impacts of climate change are sweeping, interconnected, and increasingly visible. Rising temperatures intensify heat waves, making some regions dangerously hot and reducing agricultural productivity. Changing precipitation patterns create severe droughts in some areas, while causing devastating floods in others. These extremes undermine water security, a foundational element of national stability. Forests are burning more frequently, not only destroying biodiversity, but also releasing massive amounts of carbon back into the atmosphere, reinforcing a dangerous cycle. Ocean systems are also undergoing profound changes. Warming waters are bleaching coral reefs, disrupting marine ecosystems, and threatening the fishing industries that millions rely on for food and livelihoods. Melting glaciers and polar ice contribute to rising sea levels, placing coastal cities and low-lying nations at risk. For countries like Bangladesh, small Pacific Island states, and parts of Southeast Asia, rising seas aren't a future threat there, a present reality. These environmental changes have a direct impact on geopolitics. When agricultural lands degrade, food imports become more critical. When fresh water declines, tensions rise between neighboring countries sharing rivers. When storms intensify, governments must redirect resources to adaptation and disaster relief. Environmental impacts are not isolated events, they are catalysts that shape global security and international relations. Human impacts. Climate change affects people long before it shifts borders or economies. Heat stress threatens public health, increasing mortality rates and overwhelming healthcare systems. Poor air quality, driven by higher temperatures and pollution, worsens respiratory diseases. Water scarcity affects hygiene, sanitation, and daily living, especially in already vulnerable regions. These human impacts place new pressures on governments, NGOs, and international organizations. One of the most significant human consequences is displacement. As droughts devastate farmlands, storms destroy homes, and seas encroach on coastal communities, millions are forced to migrate. These movements can be internal, people relocating within their own countries, or international, prompting new challenges in border management, asylum policy, and humanitarian assistance. Climate migration is not only a humanitarian issue, but also a diplomatic one, shaping how countries negotiate responsibility and support. Food security is another major concern. Changing weather patterns reduce crop yields and disrupt supply chains, increasing the risk of famine and political instability. Regions that rely heavily on agriculture face rising unemployment and social unrest. For international relations, this means governments must plan not just for economic development, but for resilience in the face of climate-driven pressures on human well-being. Economic impacts. The economic consequences of climate change reverberate through global markets, national budgets, and local livelihoods. Extreme weather events damage infrastructure, disrupt transportation networks, and halt economic activity, costing nations billions in recovery and adaptation. These losses disproportionately affect developing economies, which often lack the financial resources for large-scale resilience measures. For wealthier nations, climate-related disasters still impose heavy costs, influencing budget priorities and long-term economic planning. Agriculture, one of the world's most vital economic sectors, is particularly vulnerable. Irregular rainfall, prolonged droughts, and shifting seasons reduce productivity, threaten exports, and increase reliance on food imports. This can strain international trade systems and escalate tensions over market access and pricing. Energy systems also face disruptions as rising temperatures increase electricity demand, while climate impacts such as drought reduce hydropower capacity. Industries like tourism and fisheries, reliant on stable natural environments, face substantial losses. Coral bleaching threatens marine tourism, while melting ice alters Arctic shipping routes, opening new economic opportunities but raising geopolitical competition. As economies shift to adapt, international institutions must reevaluate lending, development assistance, and climate finance responsibilities. Climate change is not just an environmental cost, it is a global economic disruptor, reshaping international priorities. Solutions and recommendations. Addressing climate change requires a combination of global cooperation, national policies, and individual actions. At the international level, nations must strengthen climate agreements, commit to emissions reductions, and invest in renewable energy transitions. Diplomatic frameworks should support technology sharing, climate finance, and adaptation strategies for vulnerable states. International organizations like the UN, World Bank, and regional alliances play a crucial role in facilitating cooperation and ensuring accountability. National governments can promote clean energy, improve public transportation, support sustainable agriculture, and implement climate-resilient infrastructure. Policies must prioritize both mitigation, reducing emissions, and adaptation, preparing for inevitable climate impacts. For example, coastal protection systems, drought-resistant crops, and efficient water management are essential steps toward resilience. Governments should also integrate climate risks into security strategies, recognizing that environmental stress can trigger conflict and displacement. Communities and individuals also have roles to play, reducing energy consumption, supporting sustainable products, adopting eco-friendly diets, and engaging in climate activism all contribute to broader change. Education and awareness are crucial, helping societies understand climate risks and support long-term policy solutions. Ultimately, effective responses require cooperation across all levels of society, guided by scientific evidence and a commitment to global solidarity. Closing statement. As we reach the end of this lecture, it's clear that climate change is far more than an environmental issue. It is a defining force, shaping global politics, economic stability, human security, and the future of international cooperation. The changes we see unfolding today will influence diplomatic decisions, migration patterns, resource competition, and the very structure of global governance. For international relations students, understanding climate change is no longer optional. It is fundamental to understanding the world that is emerging. But despite the challenges, there is still room for optimism. Nations are investing in renewable energy at unprecedented rates. New technologies are transforming how we manage resources, and global awareness has never been higher. The climate crisis is daunting, but it also presents an opportunity for innovation, collaboration, and a more sustainable international system. The choices made by governments, institutions, and individuals over the next few decades will determine not only environmental outcomes, but also global stability and justice. Climate change may be one of the greatest tests humanity has ever faced, but it also offers a chance to redefine how nations cooperate and how societies build resilience. The future isn't fixed, and together, we can shape it.